There are things you learn at 32 that nobody ever warned you about when you were young and optimistic and stupid enough to believe that love was a good enough foundation to build a life on. Nobody tells you that the most dangerous people in your life will smile at you across a dinner table. Nobody tells you that the person who is supposed to stand beside you can spend years standing just slightly behind you, close enough to look like a partner, far enough to let you take every hit alone. And nobody, not a single person, ever tells you that the moment your entire world collapses is also the exact moment your real life finally begins. I know that now. I wish I had known it sooner, but I am getting ahead of myself. My name is Diana. I am 32 years old. I run a forensic auditing consultancy out of a corner office on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. I have 2 junior partners, a team of 11, and a client list that would make my former mother-in-law physically ill if she ever saw it, which she will not, because she is currently in the 3rd year of a 9-year federal sentence for wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. My former sister-in-law is serving 5 years in a minimum security facility in Virginia. And my former husband, the man I loved for 6 years, and was married to for 4, lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Gastonia, works a mid-level logistics job, and has not spoken to me directly since the morning I walked out of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse with full legal and physical custody of our daughter, Lily, and a settlement that permanently severed every financial tie he and his family had ever tried to wrap around my life. I want to tell you how I got here. Not because I need you to feel sorry for me. I am far past needing anyone's sympathy. I want to tell you because I spent 3 years of my life believing that what was happening to me was normal. That the discomfort I felt every Sunday at my mother-in-law's house was just me being too sensitive. That the way my sister-in-law looked at me across the kitchen island like I was a problem that needed solving was just a personality clash. That the slow, quiet erosion of my confidence, my finances, and my sense of self was simply the adjustment period of being married into a complicated family. It was not a personality clash. It was not an adjustment period. It was a coordinated campaign, and I have the documented evidence to prove every single word of that. I met my husband, Marcus, at a fundraising event for a children's literacy nonprofit in Uptown Charlotte. He was charming in that easy, unhurried way that men with old family money sometimes are, not flashy, not loud, just quietly confident, in a way that felt like stability. I was 26, 3 years into my career at a regional accounting firm, living in a studio apartment in Noda, and absolutely convinced that I was a decent judge of character. I was wrong about that last part. It took me years to understand why, and when I finally did, I realized it was because Marcus himself was not the primary threat. He was the cover story for one. His mother's name is Renata. She is 61 years old, a former real estate developer, and the kind of woman who enters a room like she is already disappointed by it. She has silver hair she wears in a severe chignon, and a way of saying compliments that always leaves a small bruise somewhere underneath. The first time I met her, she looked me over, with the expression of someone appraising a piece of furniture they had not ordered, and said, "Marcus tells me you work in accounting. How practical." The way she said practical made it sound like unfortunate. I smiled. I told myself she was simply protective of her son. I told myself she would warm up. She did not warm up. Marcus has one sibling, his sister, Claudette. Claudette is 2 years older than Marcus, sharp in the way of someone who has spent a lifetime learning to weaponize intelligence, and completely, unconditionally devoted to Renata. Not in a loving way, in the way of someone who has decided that loyalty to one person is easier than developing an actual moral framework. Claudette worked as an administrator for the family's real estate holding company, a company that, as I would later discover, existed primarily as a vehicle for Renata's financial maneuvering. When Marcus and I got engaged, Renata hosted an engagement dinner at her home in Myers Park, a 6,000 square foot colonial with hardwood floors and the kind of silence that money buys. She made a toast. She talked about the family legacy. She talked about what it meant to carry the Whitfield name. She said, and I remember this with perfect clarity, "Diana, I hope you understand that marrying Marcus means marrying all of us." She raised her glass. Everyone drank. I drank too, because I did not yet understand that she meant it literally. and not as a warmth. The first year of our marriage was, by most measures, fine. Marcus and I bought a house in Plaza Midwood. I continued working. We had a life that looked from the outside like a young couple building something together, but Renata called Marcus every day. Sometimes twice. I would come home from work to find him on the phone in the kitchen, speaking in the low, careful voice he only used with her, like every word was being chosen not for me, but for an audience I could not see. When I mentioned it, he told me I was being paranoid, that she was his mother, that this was just how their family worked. I told myself it was just how their family worked. The pressure became more visible after Lily was born. She arrived on a Tuesday morning in February, 3 weeks early but perfectly healthy, 6 pounds and 4 ounces, with her father's dark eyes and a grip that felt, even in those first hours, like she was holding on for both of us. I was overwhelmed and exhausted and more in love than I had ever been with anything in my life. I thought a baby might soften Renata. I thought it might give us common ground. Instead, it gave her leverage. Renata began inserting herself into every decision: the pediatrician we chose, the daycare we visited, the name we gave our daughter. She had opinions about everything and delivered them with the authority of someone who had simply decided that authority belonged to her. When we chose a daycare she had not approved, she called Marcus 3 times in one afternoon. When I asked him to set a boundary, he told me she was just excited about being a grandmother. When I said the calls were affecting our household, he looked at me with an expression I had not seen before, something tired and slightly evasive, and said, "Diana, please don't make this harder than it has to be." That was the first time I understood that in any conflict between me and his mother, I was going to be the one asked to yield. The financial pressure started quietly, the way those things always do. Marcus worked as a project manager for a commercial development firm. Good salary, stable. I was doing well at my firm, had been promoted twice. We were comfortable. Then, 18 months after Lily was born, Marcus came home one evening and told me that Renata had offered him a position running operations at the family holding company. More money. Flexible hours. A real future, he said. He wanted to take it. I had concerns. I expressed them carefully. I said I thought working for his mother introduced complications. I said I wanted us to maintain our financial independence. He told me I was overthinking it. He said it was a family opportunity, and it would be foolish to walk away. He took the job. What I did not know, what I would not know for almost 2 more years, was that the day Marcus joined the family company, Renata began a quiet, methodical process of making sure that every significant financial decision in our lives ran through her first. Not obviously. She was too careful for obvious. But over the following months, our joint account began to see unusual patterns. Transfers I did not recognize. Expenses categorized in ways that did not quite add up. I am a forensic accountant. I noticed these things. But I also loved my husband, and I did not want to believe what the numbers were starting to suggest. The moment things became impossible to ignore came on an otherwise ordinary Saturday in April. I had come home early from a meeting to find Claudette's car in the driveway. This was not unusual. She came by frequently, always unannounced, always with the air of someone checking on property they were responsible for maintaining. I came in through the side door, and I heard them before they heard me. Marcus and Claudette, in the kitchen, speaking in that same low, careful voice Marcus used with Renata on the phone. I stood in the hallway, and I listened. Claudette was telling Marcus that the retitling of the investment account needed to be done before the end of the quarter. Marcus said he wasn't sure Diana would go along with it. Claudette said Diana didn't need to go along with it, she just needed to sign the form, and Marcus needed to make sure she did. Marcus said he would handle it. Claudette said, "You better. Mom is not going to let this drag out because you don't want to have a difficult conversation with your wife." I stood in that hallway for a long time after Claudette left. Lily was napping upstairs. The house was very quiet. I walked to the kitchen and opened the laptop on the counter, and I pulled up every financial account I had access to, and I started reading. Really reading. The way I read client files at work, methodically, without sentiment, looking for the shape of what was actually there, rather than what was supposed to be there. It took me 4 hours. By the end, I had a very clear picture of what had been happening. Over the course of 14 months, Marcus, at his mother's direction, with Claudette's administrative assistance, had been systematically restructuring our marital assets. Small moves, individually explainable. Collectively, a deliberate effort to shift our shared financial position in a direction that would leave me significantly disadvantaged in the event of a divorce. Investment account beneficiary changes. A life insurance policy restructuring I had not been informed of. A transfer of equity in our home into a family trust I had never agreed to, and I checked 3 times, had never signed anything to authorize. Except there was a signature on the trust documents. My name, my signature. On a form I had never seen before in my life. I closed the laptop. I went upstairs and I sat on the floor of Lily's room and I watched her sleep for a long time. I was not panicking. I was not crying. I was doing what I do when something large and terrible clarifies in front of me. I was making a list, in my head, of exactly what needed to happen next. The most important item on that list was this. Marcus and his family could not know that I knew. I called my best friend, Priya, from a burner phone I bought at a CVS the following morning. Priya is an attorney civil litigation, sharp as a wire. I told her what I had found. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Diana, do not move a single dollar and do not say a single word to him until we talk in person." We met that evening at her office, after hours, with the blinds closed, and I spread everything across her conference table. Priya looked at the documents for a long time. Then she looked at me. "The signature is forged," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "Okay," she said, and she picked up her pen and she started writing. What happened over the next 4 months is something I can only describe as the quietest war I have ever fought. I went home every day to my husband. I sat across from him at dinner. I watched him field calls from his mother and his sister. I listened to him talk about work, about Lily, about weekend plans, and I gave nothing away, not a flicker, not a tremor, because everything I was feeling was being stored somewhere deeper than my face could reach. While Marcus was having family dinners in Myers Park, I was building a case. Priya connected me with a forensic document examiner who confirmed the signature forgery with technical certainty. We identified a paper trail connecting the forged authorization to Claudette's work email and to a notary who, it turned out, had been handling paperwork for Renata's holding company for 11 years. I documented every financial transaction, every account change, every policy restructuring with dates, amounts, and the names of everyone involved. I also installed a legal audio recording device in my home office. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. Every conversation I had with Marcus in that room from that point forward was recorded. Most of them were mundane. 2 of them were not. The first significant recording happened 6 weeks in, when Marcus came into the office and told me, with a rehearsed casualness that told me he had practiced the conversation, that his mother wanted us to formally add the house to the family trust for estate planning purposes. He slid a document across the desk. I looked at it. I looked at him. I said, "I'll need to review this before I sign anything." He said, "Of course. Take your time, it's just paperwork." He left. I photographed the document, sent it to Priya, and added the recording to the file. The second significant recording was harder. It was a Sunday night. Marcus had been on the phone with Renata for 40 minutes. When he came to find me, he sat down in the chair across from mine, and he said, without quite meeting my eyes, that his mother felt it would be best for everyone if we moved into the Myers Park house for a while. To consolidate during what he called a complicated period for the business. He said it was temporary. He said Lily would have more space. He said he thought it would be good for us to have more family around. I understood immediately what that meant. Moving into Renata's house would mean moving onto her ground, under her roof, within her full view, where she could monitor everything and control everything, and make extracting myself significantly more complicated. It was the last step in a plan that had been building for over a year. I looked at my husband, a man I had loved, a man I had believed in, a man who was sitting in front of me, asking me to walk voluntarily into a trap. his mother had constructed, and I said, very calmly, I need a few days to think about it. Of course, he said. He looked relieved. He thought I was considering it. I was not considering it. 3 days later, on a Wednesday morning, I sent Lily to Priya's house. Then, I called the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Financial Crimes Division, with whom Priya had already been in communication for 2 weeks. Then I sat in my kitchen, and I made myself a cup of coffee, and I waited. At 11:45 in the morning, 2 investigators arrived at the Myers Park house, where Renata and Claudette were both present for a standing Wednesday meeting. At 12:15, Marcus received a call at his office, informing him that his mother and sister were being taken in for questioning regarding allegations of document fraud, unauthorized financial restructuring, and conspiracy. At 12:30, Priya hand-delivered a complete legal filing to the courthouse divorce petition, full asset disclosure, emergency motion to freeze joint accounts pending investigation, and a certified copy of the forensic document examiner's report confirming the forged signature on the trust authorization. Marcus called me 9 times between 12:30 and 2 o'clock. I answered on the 10th call. I said, Marcus, I have retained counsel. Please communicate with me only through your attorney going forward. Then I hung up. The investigation took 8 months. I cooperated fully with prosecutors. The forensic paper trail Priya and I had assembled, combined with records subpoenaed from the holding company, the notary, and Claudette's work accounts was, according to the lead investigator, one of the cleanest documentation packages he had seen from a non-law enforcement source. Renata's attorney tried twice to negotiate a reduced charge. The DA declined both times. Claudette agreed to a cooperation agreement in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony against her mother was, by all accounts, detailed and damaging. Renata was convicted on 7 counts, 9 years, federal. She will be 68 when she is released, if she serves her full term. The holding company was dissolved. Its remaining assets were subject to civil forfeiture proceedings. The divorce was final 11 months after I made that call. The forged trust document meant that the home equity transfer was void from inception. The investment account restructuring was reversed. Because the financial misconduct had been conducted through Marcus's employment at the family company, and because he had been present during at least one recorded conversation in which the transfer request was made without proper disclosure to me, his position in the proceedings was, as Priya put it with characteristic understatement, not strong. He did not contest the custody arrangement. He did not contest the settlement. I think by the end, he was simply too tired and too ashamed to fight anything. I do not hate Marcus. Hating him would require me to still care about the outcome, and I have moved past the point where his choices have any weight in my life. I think he is a man who was raised to believe that his mother's authority was the same thing as truth, and that believing that cost him everything that actually mattered. That is its own kind of sentence, and I did not have to build it for him. He built it himself. I moved out of the Plaza Midwood house with Lily the week after the divorce was finalized. We rented a place in Dilworth for 6 months while I set up the consultancy. The work had been building in my head for years, the understanding of how financial crimes are constructed, how they hide in plain sight, how the people most likely to be targeted are also the people most likely to doubt their own perception of what is happening to them. I built the firm around that understanding. We work primarily with individuals and small businesses who suspect they are being defrauded by people close to them. We are very good at finding what is meant to stay hidden. Lily is 4 now. She has opinions about everything: her socks, her breakfast, which of her stuffed animals is in charge on a given day, and she expresses them with a Last week she told me, entirely unprompted, that she thought our apartment was the best place in the whole city, and I believed her completely, because she has not yet learned to say things she does not mean. I sat with her on the floor of the living room that evening, building an elaborate structure out of wooden blocks that she had very specific architectural requirements for, and I thought about Renata in her federal facility, and Marcus in his Gastonia apartment, and Claudette counting down days in Virginia, and I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not grief, not triumph, nothing. The space where all of that used to live has been filled with something quieter and much more durable, and I do not have a single word for it except mine. People ask me sometimes whether I regret not seeing it sooner, whether I blame myself for the years I spent inside a situation that was designed to contain me. I understand why they ask. There is a tendency, when we hear stories like mine, to look for the moment where the person could have turned differently, as if the lesson in someone else's suffering is a set of warning signs we can memorize for our own protection. But here is what I know from 4 years of professional work in this specific area: financial abuse and manipulation do not announce themselves. They are constructed carefully, over time, by people who understand that the most effective cage is one where the person inside is not entirely sure they are in a cage. The doubt is the mechanism. The love is the lock. By the time you have enough information to be certain, you have already spent years inside a story someone else was writing. The only thing I would tell my younger self, the 28-year-old who was standing in her mother-in-law's dining room, listening to a toast about family legacy, and trying to convince herself that discomfort was sensitivity, is this: your instincts are data. Treat them like data. Do not explain them away because you love someone. Do not minimize them because you want to believe the best of the people in your life. Write them down. Date them. Build the record. Because the truth has a structure, and if you are patient enough and precise enough, you will find it. And when you find it, it will hold up in any room you need to take it into. I know that now. My daughter will know it from the beginning. And that, more than any settlement, any sentencing, any square footage of any corner office on any 14th floor, is the thing I am most proud of building. Thank you for listening. If this story reached you in a place you recognize, please leave a comment below. I want to hear from you. And if you have ever had to make the hardest choice of your life to protect your own peace, tell me about it. Your story matters. Hit the like button if this resonated with you, and subscribe to Restoration Stories for more. Your peace of mind is the one asset no one can ever take from you, as long as you protect it with the same precision you would give to anything else worth keeping.